Hey guys, what's up? So, this is a bit of a weird video for me because it's kind of changed. Well, let me explain. What I mean by it is I thought I was going to record one video, and then the more I thought about it, the more I realized I really wanted to record a different video, which is what I'm basically recording now. But then I realized that, well, the video I wanted to record is sort of important, so I'm probably going to just stick that in the end, but just make it to a few quick bullet points, because I actually had a full video dedicated to those bullet points, and I'm realizing I didn't really need to. Let me just get on with it. Okay, first we're going to go with the meat and potatoes, and then we'll go with a little side dish, and then I'll throw in a little dessert at the end. Deal? Deal. So, martial arts. Yeah. Some of you guys may have already seen the discussion that I've had with Skallagrim about that fight. Not much of a fight when it only lasted for 10 seconds. Between that MMA guy and the so-called Tai Chi master. And you've heard my opinions on that. You've heard Skull opinions on that. If you guys haven't seen it, I'll have a link. But it got me thinking, and I don't know if it made it in the video or not. I think it did, but I know I talked about it more at length with Skull before and afterwards. And it's about the different levels that people practice martial arts at. And the reason why I wanted to discuss that here is because it links to a concern of mine that I've been having more and more about martial arts practice. And it's the fact that there seems to be, well, not seems to be, there is. It just seems, to me, it seems to have been coming sort of recently, but then I realized it's kind of always been there. It's just being more pushed to the forefront. This belief that there's really only one real way to practice it. And not only that, but it's more my concern of this all or nothing, kill or be killed approach to practicing martial arts. This kind of die hard, you need to be prepared to completely, take the dude down, destroy him sort of mentality. It's always been there, really, but I'm really seeing it a lot now these days. This whole, it's got to be straight up tactical, militaristic, be able to take a dude down. Here, my special tactical karambit and special tactical flashlight, tactical pen. Like, this guy's going to come at you and you have to be able to kill him before he kills you and all. And that concerns me for a number of reasons, which I'm going to try to put out clearly here. Emphasis on the word try. The first reason why this concerns me is because if you're living in the Western world, more or less, or even in the Eastern world, if you're living in a society that's more or less stable, you're not living in a war zone, you don't have to worry about walking with an AK-47 just to walk across the neighborhood because it's being shelled at the moment, and you got rebels or reactionary groups or terrorists or whatever running through your town. If you're not living under that particular situation, there is no immediate need to learn martial arts to the capacity where you have to instantly do a dude in. If you are not in the military, this should not be your primary concern. I know that may sound strange coming from me, because you've seen enough of my martial arts themed videos, you know that I have a problem with the way traditional Chinese martial arts is usually taught to people and how they're training in it. And yes, I do believe they need to be trained more realistically. However, I also realize that people have different needs or different desires. And we're also living in a modern age where a lot of the hand-to-hand stuff is kind of irrelevant. Do you really need to learn the 52 hand blocks in an age where you can just take somebody out with a 45? I mean, it's nice to be able to use your hands. It's nice to know Muay Thai. It's nice to, know, say, you're taking up MMA and you're learning different tactics from different martial arts. It's nice to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's nice to learn Eskrima. All these other different things. But to learn it for straight up self-defense, while I personally believe that people should know basic self-defense, basic hand-to-hand training. That's just an idea of mine. It's a certain ideology that I hold. But learning it to the extent where you're military ready, where you're trained like a Navy SEAL, not really necessary. I know you're ready to start typing down some comment real quick, some of you. But think about it for a moment. If you're living in the freaking suburbs and you have no plans on moving out of it, seriously, who are you expecting to have to use Navy SEAL type training against? Or, Russian special forces against? Who are you really thinking is going to come out of nowhere to take you out that way? And this is coming from somebody from New York, okay? I was born and raised in New York City, a place where so many people in the rest of my country is terrified of at times. Well, not these days, it's turned so much into yuppie town, but whatever. There's still like a certain, you came from New York, oh my God, were you mugged? And the funny thing is, I had more to fear from the cops than I had to fear from anybody else living in New York City. The only time I've ever been robbed at gunpoint was when I moved out of New York City, when I moved out here to the Midwest. And even then, it's a gun to my face. I don't care what type of awesome martial arts skills you know. Even Bruce Lee said you can't stop a bullet. You can't. They got the jump on us. What could I do? And I'm still alive today because I didn't have the illusion of, well, my special techniques. Come on. And even then, I'm 40, going to be 41 this year. It's the only time. Because I live in a relatively stable society. Now, if the guy tried to come at me hand to hand, it would be a different freaking story. Then, yeah, I'd be fighting. But it's gun, whatever. Anyway, the whole point is not to linger on that. It's to kind of, wake you up to the reality of the situation. If you're living in a stable society, learning brutal tactics and being prepared to take a dude out brutally should not automatically be considered the only reason to take martial arts. If that's an interest you have, sure, go for it. But it should not be the only reason. It should not be the only criteria that you are, measuring somebody's ability in martial arts or their goals. So now that I've wasted an extraordinary amount of time beating that particular point to death, let me go into the different levels that people might be training it for. And before I even go into that, let me stress this before anybody gets any illusions about what I'm talking about. I still do believe that if you're taking up martial arts, you should at the very least be able to use it. By that, I mean at least just basic self-defense. If somebody suddenly starts swinging fists at you and you take up martial arts, I don't care what your end goal is, you should at least be able to use it enough to be able to push the guy to the ground or knock him away or push him away and then run away safely to then, get somebody else to handle it. At the very freaking least. That's what I mean by basic defense. I don't necessarily mean that you should be prepared to curb stomp a dude. Some people can mentally do it. Some people aren't mentally prepared. But if you claim to take martial arts, you should be able to, if somebody's coming at you with their fists and feet or whatever, you should be able to defend yourself enough so that you're not instantly beaten to a freaking pulp or that you're frozen with fear. You should be able to, handle the situation briefly, whether it be a shove or trip them on the floor or tie them up or throw them over your shoulder, something. And this is after you've already tried to defuse the situation, obviously, verbally. Look, I don't want any trouble. Still start stuff. You should be able to do at least enough to protect yourself and get the fuck out of there. If you can't do that, whatever you're studying, either you're studying it wrong or your teacher sucks or whatever you're training in is not a good martial art. And that's a whole subject for another time. But there are different reasons these days in modern times why people want to take up a martial art, and they're not necessarily invalid. The main reason I would say would be invalid is if you're expecting it to give you superpowers. It ain't. I know, and I still get every now and then some person trying to defend the so-called mystical claims of certain internal arts. Guys, it's a physical skill. You're not going to gain super abilities from a physical skill. It's just a skill set using your body effectively in a combat situation. There is no special powers you're going to get from it. I don't know. I'm not too sure how else to explain this to you if this is the belief that you're going to have. The only other thing I could point out is if you're still going to keep believing that, keep in mind that whatever special, mystical, special superpowers you're going to have did not keep the country that you're learning this ability from being conquered. Keep that in mind. If in China, the place where it supposedly has the most mystical of superpower ability martial arts, you know, throwing kamehamehas across the room, they had an entire freaking rebellion started by a group of people who believed that they could gain superpowers from martial arts, and they lost. It's called the Boxer Rebellion. Look it up. You are not going to gain superpowers from martial arts. The dream is over. Wake up. That's the only reason, by the way, I would say that if you're learning martial arts and that's your goal, it's a stupid goal. But there are other reasons. The most basic one, the most common one I keep hearing is for health. Now, I've heard some comedic statements that, look, whatever happened to taking a walk? Why do you need to learn lethal skills in order to, improve your health? There is a point to that. But, hey, we all got our interests. Simply taking a walk through the park isn't necessarily cool. Unless there's a nice breeze blowing through. But, being able to throw several high kicks and punches in succession, that is kind of cool, isn't it? Again, whatever attracts you, as long as... Basically, the main point is getting your exercise in, moving your body, just basically using your body consistently to the point where you can stay in decent shape. It's good for you. And some people take martial arts just for that. Nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. As long as you can use it. Otherwise, it's not a martial art. Some people want to learn it just so that they know they can handle themselves. And they're going to take it to the next level. It's not just for health. It's so that they know that they can handle themselves. Not just to the point where they can knock a person down and run away and then get help, call cops, whatever. Go to the bouncer. More like, okay, I didn't come here to start the fight, but I'm certainly going to end it. Not necessarily to kill the dude. Just, they can stop it. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Basically being able to handle yourself, decent goal. You didn't start the fight, you can finish it. You can knock the dude out, you get him to surrender. That's cool. That's the general goal for martial arts anyway. It's, always been that way, to be able to handle yourself. Some people want to learn it so that they can actually, they have a cultural appreciation for it. They really want to dive into and study that art. Where did it come from? Why does it do what it does? Why the person who founded it? Why? The combat theory behind it. Can you push it further? Is there anything new that you can gain from these techniques? Can you evolve it? That's another reason to learn martial arts. There are a few people who do that. Believe it, and this is the one thing that I feel kind of annoyed about when it comes to traditional art, because there is this conception that traditional Chinese martial arts, or traditional arts period, don't evolve. Like they're kind of stuck in one groove. That's the reason why they're not effective. And while there is some truth to that, it's not completely true, because there are people out there who are evolving it. You just don't hear about them. But they are, and to be honest, part of the reason is because they're so few and far between, and they're not the ones who make headlines. But there are people who, they study their art, they think of the combat theories, and then they're like, what else can I do with this? Or, does this really work? Can we push this further? What works, what doesn't work? Hell, Bruce Lee, which so many people tout, could be considered one of those people. How can I use my body effectively? There are people in Chinese martial arts who do think that way. within their own chosen art, and they just kind of push things a little bit further than people would think, to the point where they start thinking things about what's your mind supposed to be like, what's your mind state supposed to be like when you're doing this stuff, how to think like a predator, how to think like, you know, somebody in the moment of combat, how to distill their movements to the most effective way possible with their chosen way to move. There are people still asking these questions, and they have some interesting essays and seminars and things about that, believe it or not. If you're the type of person who's into that, that's not a bad goal. And, you know, this kind of goes into lineage holding. Somebody who's taking a particular skill or a particular art and wanting to not just take it and master it, but push it further. We see this in so many different fields where they, especially fields of high skill or art, where they want to take it and make it their own, so they put their own personal stamp on it, but then they want to push it still further. Like, you'll see this with writing, literature. You'll see this with movie making, you know, music, where they're trying to push it further. And people do that with martial arts. It's another goal. Some people, they want to teach. That's their goal. They want to learn it enough so that they can teach it to others. And, you know, some of these goals can overlap. Some of these levels can overlap. There's all these different reasons. And not all of them have to do with being, you know, some bald meathead who's ready to just snap a dude's neck instantly and tactically. It's not just about that. And I am not trying to vilify that either. If that's the way, if that's the goal that you want, you really got a personal need to be that combat ready. Nothing wrong with that in and of itself. I don't think there is. If, again, it's about wanting to be as effective as possible, to, like, you know, just like really freaking efficient, really ready to handle themselves. The only reason why I do cast some shade on that is because of how it's being pushed to kind of ridiculous lengths, in my opinion. And some people think that's the only reason to take martial arts. No. And it's also kind of, I mean, I've bumped into a couple of people who have this whole, you know, like they want to, like they're like John Wick ready, and they live in the middle of they live in the freaking suburbs. It's like, what the hell? Who are you expecting to kick down your door? You know, it's one thing to want to be that combat ready simply because you're just interested in it, or it's your own personal. Like, you know, me, I want to be really efficient with a sword, and you can easily make fun of me for that because I'm living in the year 2017. Nobody's fighting each other with swords. Why the hell do I want to learn how to be effective with a weapon that is not even in use anymore? To say nothing of the fact that I live in the middle of the Midwest, where I don't have to worry about some warriors with glaives kicking down my door. It's not going to happen. But it's a personal interest of mine. And because I have that personal interest, that's the reason why I can't really make fun of, you know, somebody else who also has that, you know, interest of being so militarily ready that they got their military combatives are like that. And they're deadly with a freaking pen, or they, you know, somebody comes through, they instantly pick up their kimber and they, you know, they're going into their car stance and then just instantly blasting a dude in the freaking eyeball before they get. Some people, they want to be that combat ready, and I can't fault them for it. It's just, you know, how seriously are they kind of taking this? I guess is what I'm having a problem with, and the fact that some people think that that's the ultimate goal of martial arts training. Necessarily. It depends on what you want out of it. It also depends on your lifestyle, your outlook, you know, your career. I mean, hell, there are people who take up martial arts simply because they want to get into movies. They want to be stuntmen or stuntwomen, whatever. Nothing wrong with that goal either, especially since these days, depending on the martial art you're taking, that might be the most realistic thing for you to go for. It's definitely going to get you money. So that's something that I want people to kind of understand when it comes to training in martial arts. I know I've gone on a very long time and I haven't really gone deep into all of this, but it's just I want to give people an idea that there's different levels. And this, by the way, is also one of the reasons why I say that that dude who went up against that MMA guy was not ready for that fight. He had no business taking up that challenge because it was clear to me that he was one of those people who was training in his martial art in a level or in a sphere completely different from the MMA guy. The MMA guy is training to knock motherfuckers out in the quote-unquote ring or the floor, wherever the hell he's going to be fighting at. On the mat, whatever. That Tai Chi dude, that was not his end goal. Hell, I don't even think it was the basic goal of being like. It showed. Whoa, did it show? He was not. That was not where he was at. I even go so far as to say, well, personally, I think that the dude should have been like at least had some basics of being able to handle himself. But even then, considering that combat readiness was not his goal, even if he had some basic defense stuff grilled into him and that he could handle himself more or less against the average person, yeah, he was not really prepared for that. And we can criticize that all day and night, and you've already heard my opinions. I'll criticize it all day and night because I got plenty to say, but at the same time, I also understand that that is not going to be everybody's focus. And people have to realize that. You have to realize that not everybody who takes up martial arts is going to be prepared to suddenly get thrown into the iron cage and it has to be ready to defend themselves right then and there. That's not your focus. You're not going to do well there. And you also, I mean, we have to have realistic expectations for different people practicing martial arts in this modern age. And you also have to take a realistic, look at your own self. What do you want out of it? I myself know that if it's an average person on the street or whatever, yeah, I think I'd be able to handle myself okay. I've been in like a handful of fights. I can count it all in just one hand. The few times I did, though, well, I'm still here. Got all my teeth. Nothing got broken. I'm fine. But you throw me in the ring, I'm going to get fucked up. I know that. You put me against somebody who's well drilled in military combatives, somebody, trained Navy SEALs or whatever, I'm going to get fucked up. And you'll probably say something nice at my funeral if you're there. I accept that. I know that's not my level of training. Okay? And I know that's not my end goal of training. I don't want to be militarily trained. I want to be pretty damn good with that thing over there, but it's a different level. I go for it for different reasons. And people do have to realize that. Yes, we can criticize people for taking them for dumb reasons, or we can criticize them for claiming certain types of combat effectiveness when they don't have it. Oh yeah, then I say just criticize them all day long. But also realize that there are different levels or different end goals when people train in martial arts. I think that should at least, at the very least, be in the background. It should be in the back of your head before we start talking about things like combat readiness, effectiveness, what people take up martial arts for, what should be expected of a martial artist. We can have different discussions on that, and everybody's going to have different opinions, but they should realize that, especially in today's times, there are different reasons. And I keep repeating myself. I don't want to keep doing that, so I'm going to end it off here, that particular topic. So, one other thing, though, and this really should be a video in and of itself, but I'm just going to spit this out now, and if you want me to go deeper into it, I'll try. Actually, no, I am going to save this for a different video, because I really do need to go. And it's just the term art itself. Consider an addendum to this, but it's really kind of frustrating the hell out of me that people hear the term martial art and then consider the word art to be an excuse for them to come up with whatever freaking bullshit that they want to come up with for what they're training in. Art is not just self-expression, and I'm tired of that term being abused. I really need to do a full video on that. It's just not right now, because this is already like 24 freaking minutes. Anyway, now for the quick stuff. And it's on this over here. Remember my review on this, which, yes, beautiful sword, great gift. Thank you, Skull. There were a couple of quick points that I wanted to talk about that I didn't really get into in the last video. So, number one, I said that I was going to have pictures of this in that review, and I didn't. Sorry. Here's some now. Real quick, I did say that there was, this is a folded blade. And as you can see from these pictures here, if you look very carefully, you can see the, kind of beautiful, wood grain-like patterns in the blade. You'll notice that they're very, very subtle. It's something that you don't really see often. Well, I do see it a bit more in higher-end swords, as this one is. But a lot of times when there are patterns in blades, they try to, a lot of sword makers try to accentuate it, really try to make it pop out. And here it's a lot more subtle. In fact, the only pattern, the only, you know, little wave pattern that you see that pops out a little bit more is that Hamon-like line near the edge, which makes it kind of look katana-like. But if you look behind it, there's that nice little watery wood grain-like pattern there. It is there, and it pops out in a certain light. But for the most part, on average, most of the time when you pull this blade out, it almost looks like it's a mono steel blade. Like, you really have to look. It probably has something to do with that mirror polish, but yeah. The other thing that I wanted to point out about this sword, and it's on my insistence that the Tang Dynasty, generally when they made the so-called Tang Dynasty Dao, their particular weapon, that they were mostly straight. A viewer named Aden Yang, I believe, pointed out that there were curved varieties in the Tang Dynasty, and he was nice enough to put up a couple of, you know, different links and pages on this. Now, I will admit that there's one particular page, and I'm going to have the link in the description also, that had a lot of really interesting pictures of different swords used during that time period in armor and so on and so forth, which I found pretty useful. It was very valuable to have all this in one spot, because a lot of what's on that page, admittedly, I had already seen, especially pictures of the Dao themselves that were from that Japanese museum. I've definitely seen those over and over again. And it did remind me that, yeah, there were curved varieties. It's just that they weren't that common. And yes, they are curved, but the curve is so slight that one could mistake them for being straight. I'm not saying that as an excuse for saying, oh, all of them were straight, but there were a few curved ones. Just the curve is, let's just put it this way. The curve is not like this. Like this here, you can tell it's curved, and it's like katana curved, which is one of the weird things about this one. You know, that's why I was like, this is a weird specimen. This is like, it basically is a Tang, it's like a katana with a Tang Dynasty blade geometry. It's weird, but that's what it is. And the curved ones that you'll see on the page that I'm linking to, the curve is slighter than that. Almost as if that they curved it by accident. Now, this is not an excuse. I am agreeing, and I'm saying that, yeah, there were curved Tang Dynasty Dao, but as far as I can tell, and even from that page, it seems kind of rare. Also, there's really only one that I've seen in that page I can definitely say, yeah, that's curved. There's a couple of others that you may think are curved at first, but when you take a good look, you realize that no, the blades are straight. It's just the handle is askew. It's kind of bent. So, I mean, you may think, oh, it's curved. There are these shorter swords toward the bottom of the page, and the blade is pretty much straight. If you look at the scabbard, it's straight, and the handle goes off at an angle. So you may think, oh, they're curved. Not really. Take a good look. I mean, granted, they didn't show the blade. Who knows? The blade may be curved, but it's kind of interesting to me. Let's just put it this way. Remember that the Chinese didn't really start working with the Dao until the end of the Han Dynasty. And those Dao were straight. The Tang Dynasty didn't really come that much further down from the Han Dynasty, and they were still kind of making swords that way. The curved stuff, you start seeing them transition toward the end. And I'm thinking that could be where we start seeing that curve in. But yeah. Really cool page. Check it out. I thank Aden Yang for pointing it out. There was another viewer, by the way. This is getting to be half an hour now. I am really sorry, guys. There was another viewer that also had made a comment on me saying that, you know, it was kind of hard to cut with this thing one-handed, and it felt like the blade sometimes wanted to twist. He basically suggested that maybe the edge was off-center. I can assure him that the edge is indeed straight. It's not off-center. I took as clear a look as I possibly can, looked up and down the blade. Granted, I was using my naked eye, but I was like really trying to measure each side. Yeah, that edge is centered. So that's not the problem. I really think it comes down to the blade geometry. It's interesting to note, and again, if you look at the page I linked to, you'll notice that Tang Dynasty Dao there wasn't one universal design for the blade geometry. You'll see some of them where the edge bevel is shorter. Like this one, the edge bevel is pretty short. compared to other swords. Whereas if you look at the katana, the edge bevel is much longer, or where the bevel is, it's much longer, much more, you know, surface area on the blade given to the edge bevel. Tang Dynasty Dao seemed to run the gamut on that. So, you know, it's kind of funny to me how this particular blade geometry has become the default blade geometry for Tang Dynasty Dao being sold by the different forgers out there. I'm not too sure why this is the consensus, but that's what people are copying. And it seems to lend itself a lot more to a two-handed grip than a one-handed one. Though you can do it one-handed, and I did, it's just a little bit more difficult. I really do think it comes down to blade geometry, though, which is the reason why it does that. And besides, remember, this, at the time that it was originally being sold, remember, they stopped selling these, there's only 3 of these made, this was going for $875 when Skall had gotten his hands on it. An $875 blade with an edge that's not centered, that would be freaking inexcusable. It just would be. You do not have you don't have an imperfection like that at that price point. That's just, ooh. I would not expect that from Ronin. I really wouldn't. And that's not the case here. So. Anyway, this video got really long. I apologize for it, guys, but hopefully you were able to get something out of it. The next video, I will finally review that gen. I already have the footage recorded for it. I just need to edit it and put it up. So, until then, enjoy, and I hope you got something out of it, and I will catch you guys later. Oh, almost forgot. For those, just as I said in that last video, I am trying to get rid of some blades, particularly these, and even particularly this one. Any people who are interested in getting their hands on this, please PM me, get in touch with me. Can talk price, specs, what this blade's like, and all that, because I need to get rid of this and some other ones. I'll let you know what other ones there are. But I really need to raise the cash for my quest, which I still want to keep as a surprise. So part of me is wondering if it's, maybe I shouldn't make it a surprise. I don't know. But whatever. Need to raise the cash. It is really important. I also thank a couple of the new people who have jumped in on Patreon. Again, the Patreon, those who have stuck around, thank you. It is greatly appreciated. Those new ones who have jumped on, again, thank you. It's greatly appreciated. I also do want to give you guys a heads up that the Patreon is most likely going to be updated. I really think that I need to kind of make the rewards you get for the tiers to be better than what they are. I mean, the first couple I think are okay, but because, like, for one thing, the whole Q&A thing being that a reward tier thing, I'm not really happy with that. I want to kind of change that. I'm probably going to change that more to a Discord thing. We'll see. And don't worry, I'm not planning on raising, like, now it's like, if you give me $20, you get $50. No, it's never going to go any higher than 15. But I really need to kind of like reorganize like who gets what and why and whatever. I really want to like do that. I got a couple of ideas down the line. I'm probably going to discuss it with the people who are already on Patreon, so they'll be happy with what they get and whatever. But yeah, yeah. The main reason I'm doing that, just an update to that. Thank you guys who are supporting me. It's greatly appreciated, and at this point, it's actually greatly needed. And again, want to get your hands on these, please. PM me, let me know, because I need to get rid of these freaking things, and I also need to get the money for the quest. So, yeah. See you in the next video.